So I thought it would be nice to reflect a little bit on what living in Singapore has been like for the past 3 years, which is pretty wild to realize that I've been here for so long. 3 years ago, when I was considering moving to Singapore, I had never been here. I'd never been to Southeast Asia. I knew very little about the region in general. When my friends from back home asked me if I would still recommend it, I definitely think now when I leave Singapore and I go to other places, I do feel a little bit, was that always the plan? And the answer most of the time is, I will say the one thing that I still haven't really got used to, and I don't know if I'll ever get used to it, is So I found this super nice seating area in the middle of Orchard. I just finished having coffee and lunch with my friend who I hadn't seen in a really long time, and it was super nice to catch up. I think that's the funny thing about friendships in Singapore. It's totally normal not to see your friends every single week. With this friend, the last time I'd seen them was like June, I think. Overall, I still really, really like living in Singapore, and when my friends from back home ask me if I would still recommend it, I definitely think yes. The word I would use to describe above all else is comfort. I appreciate so much that I don't have to really worry about my safety as a woman when I'm walking around at night. I can just decide to leave my house anytime I want, which is something that I just wouldn't feel as comfortable doing if I was living in like a major city in the US, honestly. Another reason that I've talked about in my videos before is just how convenient everything is. I take public transit pretty much everywhere I go because I can reach most places by public transit, which is such a luxury. Even in, San Francisco where I was living before, public transit would only get you so far, and I didn't always want to take it at night even, again, because of safety reasons. Now, when I leave Singapore and I go to other places, I do feel a little bit anxious about like my stuff getting stolen. I can leave my laptop out at a cafe and walk away, and I just know nothing will happen. When I go travel, I have to remember that Singapore is a very special place and not a lot of other places are like this. 3 years later, it's quite a long time to be away from home. It's interesting because here, when you meet someone that's also an expat, the first thing you often ask is like, oh, how long have you been here? I've met so many people who say 5-10 years, and I'm like, wow, that's like quite a lot of time. Was that always the plan? And the answer most of the time is no, it's not the plan, because you just kind of end up stuck in a way. Like, you get really used to that level of comfort and safety that I talked about. It can be hard to leave, even if you might want to live somewhere else, you might want to pursue different opportunities. It's all trade-offs, no one place is perfect. But I just think it's interesting how I've met so many people that have said, I've been here for so much longer than I intended to, and now that I've lived here for a couple years myself, I only intended to be here for 1 year as well. I totally get how that can happen, and I'm seeing it happen to other people I know where like they thought that they were going to be here for a shorter amount of time and then they end up being here for longer. I will say the one thing that I still haven't really got used to, and I don't know if I'll ever get used to it, is the heat and the humidity. Every time I come back from being in a place that's a little bit cooler, like when I was in Japan for a month or when I was just in the US for a couple of weeks, even though it was still summer in the US and it was still really warm. When you come back here, it's just a whole different level of heat and humidity. I was saying with my friend earlier, when you see someone wearing like a winter coat or a sweater in the middle of the day in this weather, you just know they're a local, because like even in like shorts and a t-shirt, I feel like I'm just melting all the time. I just finished having lunch and coffee with one of my friends who lives in this neighborhood. It's just a little bit surreal to reflect on the fact that this was the first neighborhood I lived in when I moved to Singapore 3 years ago. Walking down the same streets and seeing all the shops and also all the new ones that have opened since I was here, it feels like not a long time ago, but at the same time, like a lifetime ago in some ways. It's also interesting just hearing about her experiences living in Singapore for less time than I have, and remembering when I was going through some of the same feelings about what it's like to live in Singapore. This is also a group of friends that has stuck around for a couple of years, which is pretty rare because people come and go very frequently in Singapore. We also went to Nylon Coffee Roasters, which I've been wanting to try for a while, and got a delicious iced coffee. Also picked up some beans to try out later. It was so packed, like there wasn't anywhere to sit. Even in the afternoon, the line was out the door, so it's definitely a great coffee shop, and I'm excited to try some of these beans at home. So I'm getting ready for a date night. We are going to Scaled, which is one of my favorite restaurants, and what I think is so cool about Scaled is they source all of their seafood locally. They rotate different items on the menu. My boyfriend asked why I was putting on makeup, and I was like, to hide all of my imperfections. Meanwhile, guys just like put on a shirt and they're ready to go. It never gets old to me how these look like torture devices. Like, who invented this? It's also funny to me that when you're dating someone, you go from like looking like a literal gremlin to looking super nice for the date night.